All right. Wow, I am blown away. I feel just blessed to be here with all of you. It's been a long time, right? We've been doing Zoom and, I did a couple lectures in the last couple years over Zoom, and you can't feel the people, right? So like tonight, to be able to come and feel all of you, it's like, really nice. Really, really nice. So thank you so much. It means so much to me. Anytime I say the word I tonight, I hope I don't do it, because it's never an I, right? This is a profession of collaboration, and that's what we do. And I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by an incredible team my whole life. And I've been lucky enough to be part of the people that pick that team, and we always look for the most passionate people that love life and work. And in a way, the idea of kind of working, even the word work, I think is a funny word. Work-life balance. I actually think as architects and landscape architects, we have to flow between those two. And if we try to put a box around them, it creates unhappiness. Because I think of my best ideas when I'm cooking, or doing yoga, or walking my dog. Right, so I try to never put a box around those. My family, I was showered with love from the very beginning. My dad was a creative, he's an artist, and he taught me to look at the landscape in a different way, to look at people, to look at images in a different way. And he wasn't much of a complimenter, but my mom was. So she showered me with a lot of love. That's me over there. My dad painted his whole life, and he started out in this kind of very abstract world, and he taught me to never be afraid to change directions. So he did this abstract kind of space, and then he moved to painting the images that he grew up with in Lamar, Colorado. And he used to say to me, like, look at the way that, that dog is sitting, that tire. He would capture these images of rural America. And I used to come in and watch him paint late at night. It was I could never sneak in at night because he was always up painting, so he always caught me if I was out too late or drinking or whatever. But this was the road I used to sit on with him and my grandpa, waiting for the geese to come off the lake. And he painted a lot of images of this road. And this is where he wants to be sprinkled when he passes. He's still alive, he's 86, and he's still painting. It's pretty incredible. This is his most recent series. He's painting the migrant workers, people that harvest our food with their hands and put it on our table to connect us to those incredible people that bring us food. So most of all, my dad just taught me to look at things. And I think we all probably had some people that taught us how to do that. And I think it's our job to teach people how to look at things, or at least encourage them to really look at things. Because so many of us can just walk, throughout the world and not really look. And the faster life gets, the more we all just kind of move, right? So what a blessing he's been. I always use this image to kind of talk about that. Because the things that he used to have me look at was like a field of corn, or this is one of my favorite examples of just a field of hay. What is a more beautiful statement of minimalism than that? Bill Stumpf, who revolutionized ergonomic furniture, I founded my firm with his son, and he gave us free rent for 5 years. Well, it was supposed to be 5 years. It ended up being 7 years, because we couldn't really make any money. So I always want to put the late, great Bill and give thanks, because I could have never done it. I opened the firm with $1,000, no experience. John had 7 years of experience. We designed a postcard that won a national award, and we were off and running. And I'll never forget the first check I got. I was like, people are actually going to pay us to do this? This is fantastic. So I also, right away, I committed to working with architects I loved. and thinkers that I loved, and artists that I loved. So from the very beginning, I just flew around the country and I met with people that I loved. And I had some great teachers and a few founding principles. The first one was to make sure I was always on site with my team to feel the earth and to ask it what it wanted us to do and to listen to it. And the second was to create a dialogue between architecture and landscape architecture. One of my favorite comments is when people can't tell where the architecture stopped and the landscape architecture begins. That's what we strive for when we're working with architects, a seamless integration. And so I'll just kind of flip through a bunch of images of built work that are about very simple principles of geometry and placing a structure on a land and the poetry of that. It doesn't matter how small a project is. It's just the beauty in it. These are David Samala, who taught me so much about rhythm and repetition and scale. He's never designed a home wider than 24 feet. We used to always flip our pavers upside down to hide the chamfered edge, make them feel like wire-cut pavers. And we never planted against buildings. We love to celebrate the way a building meets the earth, and we never wanted to hide that. These are all David. Vincent James, great architect, and his team, really about placing an object in a forest and the way a minimal palette makes you connect with the surroundings. To me, it's always so interesting when you take the geometry of a piece of architecture and extend it out. I don't believe that you can recreate nature. I would never try to recreate Mother Earth's incredible forms, and instead always contrast her and celebrate her through contrast, especially in the rural setting. I love repetition and rhythm. Brennan Stool Lynch of Chicago, where you can just take a floor and move it from inside to out, and the beauty of that simple move. This is his architecture research office out of New York, Stephen Cassell. And we just worked on these moves that just kind of brought the inside out. This simple delineation. This is actually a water wall at the back. You can always hear the sound of water, but you can barely see it. It's so subtle. Standard architecture out of LA. They're really building some incredible work these days and have a beautiful spirit of collaboration. Beverly Hills. I never got to work with cactus until we did this project. Boy, are they fun. You can just do anything with them, you know? You just pack them in, line them up, ripple them. The contractor was like, you can't plant these that close together. I was like, why not? Just put them in there. They've totally held up. I love to site architecture on a piece of land too, and place it in a way that it feels like it's growing out and framing views through quiet, just quietness. This is the Minneapolis library with Caesar Pelli. It's my first bench, our first bench, our first lights. Worked with Beverly Pepper, starting a long tradition of working with public artists. And this was an interesting project because we got this rock gifted to us from a quarry that had gone out of business when the budget was really low. And after we installed it, the quarry reopened. Everybody wanted to use this rock. And so it was very sustainable. To me, it's a very sustainable story. This is Vincent James again in Tulane, and this dialogue between the delicate moves of his canopies and the railings that we brought in. And again, this commitment to quiet. Sometimes you have a conversation with the old, right, in historic. So this is a church on the National Historic Registry, and the church just wanted a black wrought iron fence, and yet they had these beautiful windows. So we created this pattern that was out of their stained glass, and when you're at an angle, you can't see it. And when you're on the inside, we did a straight perf, and the pattern on the outside, so it becomes very abstract. Very simple water rills. Done a lot of work with the GSA and the OBO, State Department work. This is Julie Snow. We took this similar stone here and abstracted the region with these grids of tamarack and birch trees to celebrate Warroad, Minnesota on this land port of entry. It's fun to think about people crossing from one country to the next, and that the responsibility of kind of greeting them when they come in. This is also a land port of entry with Julie and Matt, Julie Snow and Matt, in Maine. And there was this great history of potato farming there, so we came up with this mounded concept. Moshe Safdie, Singapore. I was so fascinated by his balconies and the geometry, and that became the dialogue. Another house on the historic house. I liked the house so much, these white panels over here. We designed this fence that celebrated them. And most recently with Young Projects in East Hampton. Just a beautiful new house, really creative young architects. And, you know, imagine if we would have cut down this tree, right? Most people would have cut down this tree. It just gives the house so much character. And you know what? It was there first. This is just bluestone, but it's laid in strips. So that's kind of just past built work. I thought I'd give a barrage. From the very beginning, we've been risk takers. And we've also been committed to creating a brand with our work and sticking with it. And I think it's a huge part of what we do. Be willing to take a risk. And so the project that you mentioned, Jackson Meadow. I often think about these little towns that have engineers going in and writing these comprehensive plans. And what happened when I went into this town and studied it, and I read the comprehensive plan was calling for 30-foot wide roads, 24-foot wide roads, curb and gutter, 30-foot setbacks, 25-foot setbacks. The opposite of what made the first town in Minnesota so precious. The house is set 7 feet from the road. Garage is set 3 feet from the road. The roads were 18 feet wide. They had no curb and gutter. So when I went into the first town hall meeting with my partner, John Stump, all we did was show pictures of their town and how amazing it was. And then we showed pictures of the site. And we said, what we want to do is create a modern day village of your town. And your code won't allow us to do it. So if we're going to do this, we got to become partners. I didn't know that was going to be 42 town planning commission meetings, which is what it took to get it through. But we took some some risks in the beginning, and everybody told us we were wrong. The real estate agents told us we were wrong. The professors at the University of Minnesota, some of them told us we were wrong. But what we did is the land was as big as the town, and it was very easy to walk that land and say, this is such beautiful land, we're going to protect the best land. That's the oldest planning principle, right? We're going to build on the worst land, and we're going to organize it just like the town was developed, in a grid that breaks for the river. So the grid will break for the topography. And we're going to create a pedestrian system, not an automobile system, for the roads. So the roads are up top, the pedestrian path is down below, and everything will be public. The trails will be public. That's how we will get to know everybody in the town. That's how we'll all come together as one. And it worked. Everybody started to come out. But what everybody told us we couldn't do was a few principles. Minnesota's cold, right? The first one was no attached garages. All the realtors were like, what are you talking about? No attached garages. We're like, but no one will say hi to their neighbor if we don't detach the garage. And you won't feel Mother Earth if you don't get out of your car and walk to your house. And you'll come in the laundry room instead of the front door. So you got to detach that garage, and you'll block a crucial view if you attach that garage. So we detached them. And then we said, we're going to paint them all white. And everybody was like, what? You can't do that. Like everybody's been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. The thing I love about this very basic principle is your eye goes to nature. And the other thing I love about it is when people visit, because I used to live in this house on the right, and they'd stop, about half the people would say, all the houses look the same. And the next person would say, I can't believe how different these houses were. Right? So that's learning how to see. That's learning how to see. And that's, again, we can do that. We planted the whole field in one grass. And over time, but the diversity has come into it. And this very simple principles of placing the house on a piece of land and siting it at the perfect elevation, best of our abilities, and then using these detached structures to create space, right? So, and to frame views. So again, if you didn't have, we try to always have like 3 structures per property to be able to arrange them. And these simple lines in nature, especially in a rural setting, to me, versus a curved line is so much more powerful, because then your eyes go to the curves. The plants are there to be the organic. I just only drawn a few curves in my whole life, in 30 years of practice. It never quite feels right. And I love people just being able to move around the house. This is the developer. Talk about a trusting, incredible human. This was my son looking for crawdads. It was a joy to work on this place and get to live out there and talk to people. This was the project that won the International Design Award, Landezine recently, Lake Marion. It was a sketch I did after going out there for the first time. And what was fascinating about it was an oak peninsula. And there was this opportunity. The client wanted a playground for their kids, like a playground. And so just studied, well, how long could we stretch a line before it had to bend? And so this was just the idea of making a series of paths a playground. And right away they trusted it. The client just trusted it. They were like, this is the complete opposite of what we thought we hired you for. But we said, well, we're going to make a playground. We're going to make a playground out of the whole place. And you can ride your bike on it. You can walk on it. And most of all, we're going to connect you and the kids to nature. And if there's anything we've learned over the last 2 years, it's pretty much everybody wants to connect to nature, right? What an amazing lesson that has been. So here's the site. It's got this big wetland on one side. This is a very simple bridge that we stretched across it. This is that idea of the power of the line. And something we did that was super fun is we took all the invasive species that we had to cut down, and we created art lines with them in the forest, and they will break down over time as you move closer to them. And basically, we just tried to stretch these paths in a way where we didn't have to cut down a single tree, and then created these little places to sit and contemplate. Now here's a bunch of the buckthorn that we harvested for the invasive species, and in this case we just stuck them into the ground. And that little move ended up being really beautiful. I thought it would be gone by now. Like 5 years later, they're still all perfectly in there. They're going to disappear, in time. And these are the different installations. So we used the bigger logs. We did these kind of twisted twigs, and it just was a super fun way to think about it. And then you can see those are those two lines that we just stuck sticks in the ground. It's kind of amazing. You can see them from that far away, and you don't really know what they are. And then when you get up next to them, you can experience them. And I think it it connects you to reuse those materials that were growing there, and people call them invasive, like they didn't have a right to be there, but they did have big thorns on them, so we removed them, for the kids. I was totally enamored by these clusters of oak trees, and my team was, so we just stretched this very simple boardwalk out and around and over. This is the photographer I was telling you about, Peter Kersey. I love the way he shoots. He still shoots with a medium format camera, so we still hire him at certain times. And we love going out and talking about what we could have done better and what did we learn, right? So I got to do a collaboration with a landscape architect that's still alive, but he didn't work on the project, but he worked on it originally, Paul Friedberg. And Friedberg and Halprin, of course, did those great sunken concrete plazas all over the United States. And the Cultural Landscape Foundation, Charles Birnbaum and the Cultural Landscape Foundation had sued the city of Minneapolis to stop the project. Tom Oslin was designing the project, and he was going to fill in this basin. And they won, and they stopped the project. We got the next commission. And it was really interesting to go study this work. I didn't know if I would like working on somebody else's landscape, but essentially Paul designed it in 1905, and then the Cultural Landscape Foundation lawsuit, and then we won the project. And it was a very intense negotiation between the historic preservationist and the accessibility community, because we wanted to make it accessible for all. And sometimes I think historic preservation can be too rigid, because it was designed at a time when equality wasn't in the lens, right? So the first thing we did is we raised the basin up so that everybody, once they got down, this basin used to be 30 inches deep. And we wanted to come up with a way where people in wheelchairs and strollers could get into the plaza. That was required in it, but in a way that respected Friedberg's design. So there was 85% of the land. It used to only be 2.3% of the land was inhabitable in a wheelchair. And we were able to get that number all the way to 85%. So that was huge to me. And we did it by filling the basin up, which was fought by the historic community, because it used to be 30 inches deep. The other thing it did is it saved 62,000 gallons of water to 14,000 gallons. And you could fill it up in 15 minutes and drain it in 60. So it's really an efficient system. And then we made permeable surfaces throughout to keep the stormwater from going. And so this was big in that it allowed everybody to get in there. And to me, it was a story about equity. And I love going there and just watching people play in the water. Water is this thing that just makes us all feel good. And when you design something that's, very thin, and, Friedberg and Halprin were pretty genius, because if you sink a space in the middle of the city and you go in there, the city goes away. You see the skyline, but the city goes away, and you can just be there. And it was an honor. What I loved about his design to study it was these beautiful horizontal lines that he created. And so when we had to put in an ADA ramp, we just studied how we could make the walls be perfectly level, of course, because every one of his walls were, and then we slipped the ramp in behind it. So now everybody can access it, but when you look across and look at it, you don't notice it. I even got married there. We were the first people to get married there. This project we did started it before the world shut down. The city of Rochester got $20 million in Minnesota to redo the public realm. Everybody in the world flies to the Mayo Clinic, and they have great architecture, but the public realm was really lacking. And so a lot of the money was to create a great outdoor environment for people, especially these people that are coming there to try to heal, right? And so to be able to go out into a great outdoor space. So we got two big projects, Heart of the City and Discovery Walk, which was all the area around the Gonda building that Caesar did, and then removing a street and creating a park down to Soldiers Field. And to me, this project is under construction right now, so I'm going to talk more about the art. But in order to convince the community that it was worth to spend this money, our main principles was flexible program, year-round use, of course, because we're in Minnesota, and art as a catalyst. And this was a little tougher sell, but we got there. And we got there by engaging the community and creating a set of principles with the community that we always came back to. And one of them that everybody agreed on was art. And so that was crucial. And we did lots of creative engagement. We did pop-ups all the time. We did projects with the community. We tested everything in prototyping. We had conversations with people. People got to know our team. And so the first half of the project was to take this street, which was an incredibly auto-centric street, and turn it into a pedestrian street. A curbless street you could still drive on, but a vibrant street with lots of life and street trees. And then the first plaza, which was about restoring a fountain and creating another water feature as you look down at Caesar's building. So what we did was we invited a bunch of artists in from the beginning. We had a concept, but instead of doing the 1% for the art things where you invite them in after the fact, we came in and said, what do you think about this site? What do you think about the project? And we invited in great artists, and we invited in local artists, and teamed them together, hoping to make some careers out of the emerging artists, teaming them with the nationally known artists. The first one was Ann Hamilton. What a brilliant, beautiful human. If you get a chance to work with Ann, work with her. She is so incredible. She did this Letters on the World Trade Center, many, many, many projects. If you don't know her, look her up. These days, she's very fascinated with words and putting those in a public setting and getting people to interact with them. So when we put all these artists together, what happened, what I thought was so interesting is instead of doing standalone art projects, Ann was like, I'll take the paving. Raphael Lozena-Hammer was like, I'll take the sky. And Inigo was like, I'll bring water for people to drink. You know, the ideas were different than if we would have brought them in after the fact. So Anne started going through texts and peeling through text about origin stories of humans, of civilizations that had the word time in it. And she was extracting these sentences from many, many different origin stories and composing them into a beautiful poem about time and nature and the origins of human. And then George Floyd was murdered. And everything changed in Minnesota and the world, I hope. And that made us all take a step back. And I hope we all keep taking a step back and asking, what does equity mean in our public projects today? And what Anne did was she took a step back, and with the city, it was the city's idea actually originally, was like, what if we invite in a Dakota? I mean, this land was Dakota land. And help you write this poem. And Anne was like, absolutely, I know just the woman, Gwen Westerman. And so Gwen and Anne wrote this poem. And it stretches across the whole plaza. And it's just a simple plaza, a simple poem about time and the world. And we'll have finished photos of it this year. This is it. Just iPhone shot, but. And then she teamed with a local artist. She was so collaborative. You can always tell the people that are really open to collaboration. And Eric had done these cool projects where he convinced the Mayo Clinic to let him track the data. And every time someone died or a baby was born, he got the data. And he designed an art installation that literally brought light up when someone died or someone was born, but it wouldn't tell you if it was a birth or a death. In our country, we don't really talk about death, like India. So it was rejected. People were scared of it. We could only do babies being born. So American. But it's pretty cool still that when you're in this space now and the letters are vanishing into the water, every time a baby is born, fog rises. And at night, that fog is illuminated. So there is a connection to life in that plaza that is greater than just looking at you and me. That's a connection, right? But then knowing that a life was brought in. Inigo is an incredible artist from Chicago, such a humble person. And he is fascinated with the idea of manually delivering water from a well up, filling your cup, and drinking it. What a beautiful concept. It's been around forever, right? So we went through a long process to get this permitted. Ultimately, the public health officials rejected it. I don't know why, still to this day, why we couldn't get this approved, but they were worried that it was going to somehow be contaminated. They wouldn't be able to control it with all of their filters. So Inigo, in the incredible, resilient artist that he is, went back to the drawing table, and he decided he wanted to create a counterbalance to this existing sculpture that was there at the other end of the plaza, the only object in the plaza, but you can see yourself in it, so you can interact with it. And he started designing these 8-sided forms, and they stacked up. And this was him at groundbreaking. And the power of it was, often more powerful than you could try to convince your client it's going to be. And then when you get it in, everybody can feel it and feel very connected. Virginia Wellness, this is the project. One of my favorite things to do is lead projects with architects and bring in architects and pair clients with architects. So in this case, after meeting this client and walking this incredible land in the Shenandoahs, I said to the client, I think, Marlon Blackwell and Olson Kundig, Lake Flato, those are the three I put forth right now. We ended up going with Marlon and Tom Kundig. This is very early on, but the cool thing about this project is it's a wellness retreat. You will check your cell phones at the door. You can check them out if you need them, but we can get a hold of you if somebody needs to get a hold of you, and you will go into nature, and the practitioners there are deep wellness. This is a place to go to get inside, to figure out what's going on in there and go as deep as you want to go. The practitioners are really going to be incredible. That's the master plan. It was really taking a big piece of land, creating a commons, which you see down here in the lower left, and then a series of residential housing units. And Marlon and Tom, Kevin, Tom Kundig and Kevin and Kirsten, everybody's been so collaborative, Marlon and Nanti, and a kind of a dynamic circulation piece. We also brought in a Native American to kind of bless the land and feel the land and tell us where the energy center was. And then we're creating an installation at that energy center. And then there's a series of installations that'll go throughout the whole campus that are about earth, wind, fire, and water. And this is the commons. And so you see Marlon's meeting centers, that triangle building. The food and beverage hall is off to the right, and to the left is the spa. The long bridge, when you land at the arrival building, it's not like you check in at a normal place. You check in, they take your luggage, you check your cell phone, and you go across a long bridge over a ravine and connect with the earth. And then when you get off of that bridge, you're connected to this Native American, the center, the energy center. Is very new. These are the first renderings that we've done of the project. So this is the welcome building that we're collaborating with Marlin on. Have this thing placed right at the edge of the ravine. You go through this canopy, you get your keys, and you go across the bridge. You go to your room, and your bags are brought to you. Olsen Kundig is doing these very, very efficiently designed cabins that are meant to be about connecting with nature. And each room, of course, is very separated and private as it looks out over the landscape and connects. There is a yoga building. This is a Blackwell building. Very quiet entrance. All of the paths and building placements were not trying to create any nature here. We're just restoring her, contrasting her, strengthening the soil, bringing back the biodiversity that was always here. The fitness building is an Olsen Kundig building, and it's also located, all of these are really elements that you go and discover. And then when you go to the commons, there's a series of paths and installations, landscape installations, and you go to the meeting room, which is a very powerful, this is where ceremony will happen. This is where deep healing will happen. And so there needs to be this kind of element of safety and magic to it, because you'll be doing all types of therapy here, trauma work. And in this particular room where a lot of the trauma work will be done and the exploration work, you'll look out over this incredible view of the Shenandoahs. To me, to be able to, work with the team that places these buildings and frames these views is such an honor. The spa by Olsen Kundig sits a prow. This one was actually a little more difficult to cite because of the size of it, but I think we've got it right. And then the food and beverage building, it's very unassuming when you're entering it. It kind of pulls you in. The restaurant's over to the right, but geez, powerful from the backside. And it frames these big views out. This is Marlin and Auntie. And their team, of course. So 3.5 years ago, we were invited to a competition, and we were up against Foster and Henning Larsen, and it was to design a 100-mile-long park. 100 miles. Imagine. How many times would that go back and forth across Dallas? In Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, 8 million people, and they don't have a park system. And I couldn't believe it when we won it. I mean, I could, because it felt like we were supposed to do it. And the first time I went to Riyadh, and you always think about what the media says about the Middle East, and I got off the plane, and I just felt like I'd been there before. And I loved the people, and they didn't have a public realm. And so this RFP called for a cycling boulevard that would stretch across 100 miles of the city, where 1 million people could walk to this within 10 minutes. So this is in 2012 was the first time we had ever worked over there. A lot of change was starting to happen in Saudi. There's every time I go over there, there's a whole nother a level of change that's happening there. In 2016, I think the most visionary plan for design that has ever been written was released for the 2030 plan. It prioritizes great design like no government document I've ever read. It absolutely places complete emphasis on the public realm and the quality of space and the quality of the designers. So we started it in 2016. Everything was changing over there, from women's rights, women in major positions, leadership positions. But to us, this was about bringing a park to the people, and an inclusive park to the people that was welcome to everybody. And that was a parameter of doing it from the very beginning. And the overall arching goals of the Vision 2030 is a vibrant society, thriving economy, with 6 overall arching goals about the diversity of the economy and the public realm really being the driver of those. And so this is the plan. We are the lead. We're leading a team of architects. Foster is on here too, doing the code. Eldorado from Kansas City is doing the architecture. We're leading the public realm, TIPSA engineers. And it's 140 kilometers. There's 120,000 new trees we'll be planting, 3.5 million square meters of open space, 220 kilometers of cycle tracks. And what is it? It's this idea of taking this existing infrastructure, this highway and this utility corridor. This was the first time I went out and stood on it. This is our park. And the idea of burying all these lines and consolidating all these lines and creating a park on top of here is really, really exciting. This has pushed us to the limits, the pace of this project and what it's taking. But you can kind of see here how this is the urban part of it that goes right through the heart of the city, and all these green loops that reach out in the neighborhoods and pull people in. There is a lot of development that the RFP did not call for development. We came to the table and we said there has to be an economic plan around this. You'll never be able to maintain it. We're going to bring on a team of economists and real estate, and we're going to build the economic model for this thing. And so we created a little over 500,000 square meters of developable parcels that was not asked for. And then we showed them how much money it was going to, this is going to obviously cost a lot of money to build. We showed them how much it was going to cost to maintain. And then we built a model based upon how many parcels we created, but by the time we get this thing built, it's fully operational. The operations are fully paid for. So this is what sustainability is in a park, as far as not only all the systems, but the economic sustainability. Because it costs this much to build it and it costs this much to maintain it. And if we're not thinking about that, we're not doing our clients any service. Foster wrote the code, and we wrote a code for about 8 blocks into the city. And it's a form-based code, but it's also a performance-based code. Because as you can see on the left, the parcels were developed kind of like strip malls. And so now this whole corridor will be activated by people, because people will be living on this park, and that's what is going to make it so amazing. And then the whole park is about wellness. It's about organic food. We have an eco district. We have the first arts district being built in Riyadh, which is a whole community for creativity and artists and galleries and makers. We have a whole wellness district, a whole athletic districts, and entertainment districts. There's 170,000 square meters of cultural venues, 64.8 reduction in travel time between neighborhoods, 100% recycled water, 60 different sports venues, 220 kilometers of cycling paths, and 50% additional open space per person of the 8 million people. That's how much this park is going to change the city. There's a professional track out in the desert. There's many different types of cycling typologies because people haven't cycled there before. And all these different types of activities to encourage people to move. They have a very high obesity rate in Saudi Arabia. So this project is about encouraging people to move and connecting them to the food that they put into their bodies. In Wadi Hanifa, it's really this beautiful restoration that Burrow Happel did. And what we were doing was kind of threading a cycling corridor through it and designing a series of cycling pavilions that are actually crafted out of stone. So these are limestone slats. And you go under here for shade and protection. You can use the restroom, you can rent a bike, you can have a date smoothie. And then when you get to the urban section, you go across a bridge. The cycle pavilions, which Eldorado Design repeats throughout the whole 120 kilometers. And it's just back to those principles. When those same principles apply when you're painting with huge paintbrushes. It's kind of simple, big moves, connecting people to nature, collaborating with local Saudi artists. We've integrated with the whole the Saudi art community, which used to not even be able to practice public art. Not only do they get to practice public art, but they're being celebrated in a way that has never happened in that country before. This is the Arts District. Then the urban wadi, we sunk this area down below the grade, 363,000 square meters. So it sits down kind of like Halp and Friedberg, right? So the city kind of goes away, and we recycled all the water that's being wasted in the pipes, and we were able to create a whole continuous water feature. And then in collaboration with Eldorado, we designed this kind of very dramatic central space to celebrate water. The recycling center, this is where we're recycling all the water and educating people about the value of water. And next, in any day, we're getting the keys to our new office in Riyadh. We're the only white people, we're the only Westerners that have been invited in to be in the middle of the new arts district being developed by the Minister of Culture. This is huge trust by them for us to come in and a commitment to collaborate with the Saudi artists and to create a collaborative environment for people. I couldn't be more excited to be doing this. We've started construction. It's going to take us 15 years to build this thing. 100 miles long. It's definitely, I couldn't think of a more fabulous way to spend the next 15 years. So this is the festival they just had. This is the new arts district that we're moving into. You know, I just want to take a moment to talk about how important it is to frame our visions for our firm and our brands and commit to those and root into those and a set of principles, because this is what builds, I think, strength of the people that we're working with and celebrating with in our team. So we have 4 pillars. And financial sustainability, if I could do one thing over again, and if I had to tell anybody that's opening a new firm, interested in opening a new firm, find somebody that loves financial strategy and business strategy as much as you love design. And make them an equal partner from day one. Because for 15 to 20 years, I went like this. We won every award, we won everything, and we're always on the verge of barely making it. And then I met a woman that knew how to think about business in a way that I couldn't possibly imagine. And she transformed our firm in 5 years. I also married her. And then culture, right? We're nothing without our team. We have to be incredible ambassadors of creating an empowered environment for creativity and accountability. So our initiatives this year, well, these are our differentiators. These are the things we live by, right? I've talked about them tonight. Context, risk-taking, client culture, craft, design excellence, being on site, transformation. At this point, we're most interested in creating projects that are really going to create transformative places. So these are our initiatives this year. Wellness. Every senior associate and principal has to present their wellness plan to us. How are you going to take care of yourself? Because you know what? They don't teach us to take care of ourselves. Just like they don't teach us how to run a business in school. And then empowerment, accountability, and growth. I'm on time. podcast completely changed the way I'm looking at the world. And this is another initiative we're doing in our firm this year, which is equity, not just talking about it, not just thinking about ways that we're going to have some sort of recognition to equity in our projects. Of course, that's important, but it's seeing the world in a different way. Take a picture, write it down, seen on radio, season 2, seeing white. Seeing white. Our profession is very white. And it's just this way of telling the story that I promise you, when the last episode of season 2 ends, you're going to almost cry that it ended. But luckily, season 4 is the history of the United States, the history of racism, the history of taking from the earth. Because the same white people that invented racism in the 1300s that moved to our country and took it from the Native Americans are the same white people that created dominance, white men that created dominance over women, are the same white people that only gave land to privileged white people, are still very active in our political structures today. And then the 5th season is on climate change. And what I didn't ever really realize was that those same white men promoted a concept that we could take from the earth if it was good for humans. That is the advent of climate change. That's the beginning of it, right there. Take those minerals, take from the earth. 78% of the population, across party lines, supports priority funding for climate change, but the politicians aren't talking about it. That tells you a little bit about our political system. But I love this so much. And my team, I can't tell you what a talented group of people I work with. You create an environment where people feel empowered, and I just love watching them grow. This is the beginning of our project. First mock-up. Thank you so much for listening to me tonight and having me here. I just so appreciate it. Yeah.